Has everybody got their picture with Ratso tonight?
It was more about Mofos and Ratso.
All right, everybody, welcome back again. We appreciate everybody coming. If you weren't here for the first half, welcome to the Hub, the Palisades Hub. This is a co-production of the After Dark Fund and the Palisades Hubcap Center. And tell all your friends and neighbors about the Hub, about what goes on downstairs, what goes on upstairs. There's plenty of opportunity for you guys to engage and enjoy music here at the Hub. And please welcome back Bob Berberich and Joe Triplett. Bob, I want to start off. I breezed through a couple of these pictures because I apologize for them being in such a crappy random order, and that's all my fault. But people wanted to talk about this picture with Allen Ginsberg.
Okay, this is the Hangman. We played a thing called the Now Festival, which was like pre-hippie, beatnik, pop art. It was an art show in Adams Morgan. And it drew all these New York celebrities, including Allen Ginsberg. Here's Allen Ginsberg with the Hangman.
And you know, that's actually a perfect segue because I know both of you guys throughout your career during this time in the 60s and 70s, during the Vietnam War, played a lot of anti-war concerts. Yes. Richard Harrington, who I don't believe is here tonight, but very much weighed in on some of the line of questioning for tonight, reminded me of a May Day concert in 1971 down in West Potomac Park. This was the scene of what I believe is the largest mass arrest of people, if not in the world, certainly in the United States at any one time, when thousands of people were rounded up by police. As the story goes, and Joe, you know, we'll go to you, but as the story goes, everybody was arrested as Claude Jones was finishing their set.
We went on at 6 a.m. And I remember looking out over the crowd, and there was nothing but sleeping bags. Everybody was sleeping. And turns out that Peter Bonta was in the crowd.
He was the piano player for the Rosenthal Boys.
He was in the crowd. He said he remembered us doing Dylan's St. Augustine. And when we finished the set, I came off stage and we were, you know, packing up our gear and stuff, and I went to retrieve my car, and I saw these buses coming right down there on the right there south of the Lincoln Memorial. All these buses and all these, you know, like soldiers or cops in riot gear, and they were. I was like, oh my God, the heat is here. Like, get the hell out of here. And I managed to get in my car and flee. But they ended up taking thousands of people. They put them in RFK. Yeah.
And Grin had played there earlier in the day. And there's a bootleg CD of Grin playing Mayday.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I just discovered it the last couple of years.
Grin had played earlier in the day?
Yeah, because there's live recordings of us playing. It's a bootleg CD.
I didn't know that.
How do you get it?
I think probably just search Grin and anti-Vietnam or Grin Mayday, and it'll come up, and you'll probably find a way to buy it.
I have some of the questions here from the audience, and some of them are legible. I can read them. They're in large font as I requested, so we will go through some of these. Talk about opening for some of the big names that you opened. This person lists Hendrix, Santana, and Springsteen.
I don't remember opening for Santana. Did you open for Santana? Because Claude Jones opened for a lot of big songs.
We opened for some big acts. We opened for the Poco. I remember that. We opened for Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels at American University. We opened for the, I'm having a senior moment, I can't think of the name of the band now. The Allman Brothers. We opened for the Allman Brothers at American University when Dwayne was still in the band, when Dwayne was still alive, in the gym there.
And, you know, Grin and the Hangman open for numerous big acts, and mostly when you open for a big act, you don't really see them. I mean, they go to their room, and they're on the road. They don't give a shit about their opening act. Couple things, though, when we opened for Hendrix, and I remember we played like an outdoor fairground right on the Pacific, and the fog was coming in. But that gig, they only had like one trailer for the bands. So Hendrix was sitting, we were all sitting in the same dressing room with Hendrix, and he was really very quiet and just kind of sat there with a smile on his face, and he would say hello, and he would talk to you, but it wasn't like, he wasn't some flamboyant character. He was actually kind of shy.
And Springsteen, was that at the Fillmore? Was there a show at the Fillmore?
Springsteen, when we first went to California, when Grin first went out there, back then the Fillmore had this, I forget what night it was, but it was Tuesday or whatever night it was in the week. I don't remember, but they had unsigned bands got to play. And Grin played, and Steel Mill played. And that was Springsteen's band. And that's where Nils met Springsteen. And I will tell this one story from that particular time, because I played the Fillmore a few times, but that was the first time. And as I was going on stage, there's some hippie there, and he's offering me a tube. So I go, cocaine, great, sure, I'll do that. And so I tooted up what I thought was cocaine. Turned out it was some super psychedelic. And so I'm on stage at the Fillmore for the first time, and we're playing our set, and I have an out-of-body experience. And no shit, I swear to God, my psyche went to the ceiling, and I'm looking down on myself playing. And I'm freaking out. But then I say, well, shit, I'm doing okay, so I know this is just the drug, so what the hell, I'll go with it.
One person did ask, where did the name Hangman come from?
I don't know specifically. It was just trying to get something that sounded like it was old British or something,
Trying to cash in on
the
English way, right?
Yeah.
Joe, one of the audience members wants to ask you about a photo shoot you did for Unicorn Times for an article about Root Boy Slim and Michael Reedy. Do you remember this?
I remember doing the interview with Michael Reedy, and
And Root Boy, there's a great shot of that.
What's that?
There's a great shot of that somewhere.
Yeah. Reedy was quite a cool guy. Yeah, he was an interesting guy.
And Bob, how about, somebody has some questions here about Grin and touring overseas. Did you guys ever do any overseas touring with Grin?
I never got overseas with Grin, and it kind of, I'm sorry that I didn't, because I had a lot of people come back from England and said they heard Slippery Fingers on the radio in England and, and in Europe, but I never got a chance to tour in Europe.
And how about Claude Jones? Did Claude Jones do any touring?
Not much, no.
He played some colleges around and stuff, but not really touring.
Yeah, we played in New York, we played in North Carolina, mostly all around D.C. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the Roslyn Mountain Boys. It's a great name. We're all familiar with the mountains of Roslyn.
Well, the name came from, Happy Acosta actually came up with the name. I moved in with Happy at this shack in Arlington, right above Roslyn there, above the river, and which later became known as the Sponge, because the place was so damp. Everything was.
It was a little wooden shack in the woods.
Yeah.
You could stick your finger through the wood. It was so rotten. But it was cheap.
So Happy and I started out as a duo. And it was my idea to do country music. And Happy and I started out as a duo. And I knew a guy who had a club in D.C. It was called the 21st Amendment was the name of the club. And so Hap and I played there as a duo for weeks. And then we got Peter Bonta in the band.
You know, Peter came later. Peter
Peter came later?
Yeah, because what happened was, well, I mean, the best story is, but pre-Roslyn Mountain Boys, because you had started writing those songs when you and your friends built the first stage at the Psychedelic and basically introduced music to the Psychedelic. You convinced
right.
sort of to build a stage in the Psychedelic. And I played the gig, and we were playing some of the early songs of the Mountain Boys.
The Slippery Eels was the name of the band. The Slippery Eels.
So, but what happened with
the stage?
The Mountain
so we could
Boys,
play there.
yeah, the Mountain Boys formed, and I was the drummer in the Mountain Boys, and I left. I left on my bus trip. I had a screwed up head, so I went and bought a 2-month bus ticket and went all around the country and visited friends and came back and rejoined the band and moved into the Spunk.
Okay, now I'm reminding of the hilarious story we got to tell.
Yeah, but the Spunk, I mean, great house, and that's when we were just still starting out, and our first big break came when we got a gig at Shamrock. And Bonta came on after me because Bonta came on to play bass after Jay Sprague quit.
Don't tell him.
Really, I can't remember.
That's what it was.
So anyway, so Bob has moved into the basement of the Sponge, and I'm upstairs, and the landlord had decided, this must have been in the fall of whatever year it was, 73 maybe, and the landlord had decided to convert the coal furnace over to oil. And so there was a brand new furnace, new setup. It was warm weather, so I never used it. So during on this day we're talking about, I had gone down and it was going to get chilly, it was October. And so I was going to fire up and get the furnace going. I lit the pilot and went upstairs, and there was a new thermostat, set the thermostat to 70 or something, and I was sitting back upstairs, strumming guitar or something, and I heard this. Holy crap, what is that?
Steam radio.
I thought, and I realized that the boiler was going to explode. I had failed to open the valve to let the water into the boiler. And so I knew Bob was downstairs, and I think, the boiler's going to blow and Bob's going to be killed.
My room was right next to the boiler.
Bob's going to be killed. I run down the stairs. And
there was an overflow pipe down there.
Meantime, the giant explosions are still happening. But I get to the bottom of the stairs, and the whole basement is filled with steam. And I'm yelling, Bob, run! Run out the back! She's gonna blow! She's gonna blow! And I'm looking through the steam. I couldn't see anything. Bob, run! Where are you? I don't hear him. And I see something's moving in the steam. It's Bobby. He said,
We have another question about Roslyn Mountain Boys opening up for Jerry Lee Lewis at the Stardust.
what's that?
We didn't. We opened for Jerry Lee Lewis, but that was at one of those outdoor festivals. But we opened at the Stardust
For Conway.
for Conway Twitty, and that was the best. That was the absolute best.
Yeah.
Because we were there, we were getting ready to set up. Conway's bus, this is before country went super big. This is 75 or 76. Anyways, before country really hit the big stadiums again. So Conway, bus drives up, and the guys start unloading their own equipment out from underneath the bus. And, well, what I found out was the guys in the band unloading their own equipment and loading it up on stage. And Conway had actually a famous drummer who was a mentor to Levon Helm, a guy named Pork Chop. And they get their equipment set up. Pork Chop comes up to me and says, "Oh, you're the drummer for the other band? Just use my stuff." And I'm like, "Great, yeah, wonderful, thank you so much." And coming from a rock and roll world where, I hate to say it, but even in the hippie days, the competition and the way you got treated a lot of times really sucked. I mean, people weren't out to help you out a lot of times, the other bands. A lot of times they would make sure that if you were the opening act, that your volume was on half and that you didn't get the whole array of lights. Because they wanted to be able to blow you away when they came back on as the headliner. And here's Conway's drummer saying, "Just play my kid." I'm like, damn, what a different world.
And those guys were total princes.
Total princes.
That's the
And
same.
they were fantastic.
I think it's the same night I talked to Conway.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
And that's when, Conway comes out and goes, "Hello, darling." And the place, every
Place was
woman
just
in the
melted,
place, and
yeah.
it was filled with women. I mean, they were on their knees.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
It was something. It was something.
And then afterwards, Conway, he stayed and signed autographs for everybody in line. Waited till the very last person. Then he comes back into the dressing room and talks with us.
Yeah, I talked to him for a minute. I asked him about, I didn't lose her, I threw her away. I said, "Man, why don't you ever do that song? I didn't lose her, I threw her away. It's a great song. I love that song." He said, "Well, the thing is, that high note in there, we had to, double track it, or we had to take, 10 takes to finally get that one note." And I said, "Well, I had mentioned we did the song."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, who sings it?" I said, "Oh, I do." He said, "Do you hit that note?" I said, "Well, sort of, sometimes." He was just an absolute prince, just a total regular guy. I mean, just as nicest regular guy.
We opened there a few times with the Stardust. We opened for Jerry Reed.
Jerry,
Yeah, that was a nutty.
Did you guys open for Emmy Lou at all?
Yes.
yeah.
We opened at Lisner when she did her first
At
return concert to D.C. with the hot band. And we opened the show. And
75?
What was that guitar player? Burton.
James Burton.
James Burton.
James Burton went up to the Warner rep and said, "These guys are really good. You need to sign them." Which they didn't. But James Burton actually really liked our band. He was standing on the side of the stage watching us.
You were about to talk about opening for Jerry Lee at Stardust?
We didn't open for Jerry Lee. We played at like an outdoor festival type thing, and it was Jerry Lee and Buck Owens and a bunch of other people. But the Mountain Boys we opened for Tammy Wynette and Loretta Lynn, and we opened at Laurel Racetrack for Alabama, and we did some big shows. We were definitely the top country act around at that time, and we did some pretty big shows. And our album, which is an album I'm really proud of, and it's some of Joe's great songs. It's been a while, in 10 years' time, stuff. That album sold like crazy in just D.C. We weren't known anywhere else, but we sold like 10,000 copies in December of the year it came out, which is pretty good.
Speaking of which, I think you can buy some Roswell Mountain Boy swag out at the door
That's right.
on your way out tonight. So if you don't already have this, you can get it.
Right.
Somebody was wondering, why is it so hard to get What a Girl Can't Do, to get a 45 of that? Do you remember how many were printed?
No, but it basically only sold.
When you own a record store, how many do you have in your
I think
basement?
it might have been 45,000 or something. It wasn't that many.
I've got a handful. It was put out as a reissue by Windian, which is a local company, and you can actually get them. You can go on Discogs, which is the seller I use for selling our records, but you can find it there, and you can find the original too. But it probably cost you some.
I paid
Reissues.
$25 to record What a Girl Can't Do. Each guy in the band. I don't think you did.
I didn't pay it.
But me and Henley and Tom paid $25 each. And years later, Tom gave me $45, so I made $20.
I've played
For
on
number one hit.
dozens of records, and I've never received a dime. Some of them are still in print. You can still buy them. But drummers don't. Don't make any
All right, so we're on the Roslyn Mountain Boys. I got to tell you this one story, it's a family story. So my daughter's 5 years old, and she gets on the bus, and she sits next to this little boy, and they're going to kindergarten on the bus for the first time. And the little boy looks at Leah and says, "What's your dad do?" And Leah says, "Well, my dad's in a band." And the little boy says, "So's my dad." And Leah says, "Well, yeah, but my dad's band's got a CD out." And the little boy says, "So's my dad." And then Leah says, "Yeah, but my dad's in the Roslyn Mountain Boys." And the little boy says, "So's my dad."
We had a question from the audience about playing Fort Reno. Do you guys have any memories of Fort Reno?
Sure. Well, we played there. You played there in Claude Jones, and I played there in Grant. And years later, when Otley, my band, my wife, tried to get a gig at Fort Reno, we were told because we didn't live in D.C., we couldn't play. And I'm 5 generations D.C. I mean, go back to 1860. So I'm sorry that I moved to the suburb of Frederick and I don't live in D.C. I can't play the fucking place. But,
How do you really feel?
We can afford to live in D.C.
anyway.
Bob, you want to talk a little bit? I mean, you're still playing out there, and talk a little bit about the music you're making. Joe Dolan, your bandmate from Vikings, is here tonight.
And we're playing here next
And you're
month.
playing here at downstairs at the Palisades Hubcap Center soon. Talk about that band.
Well, they formed at their high school reunion, the Vikings and the Walt Whitman Vikings. The reason they formed was just to play their high school reunion.
I got to tell you, all these years I never put that 2 and 2 together.
Well, that's what it was.
Thanks for connecting those dots.
And so their drummer from, I guess for some reason couldn't play the gig, so they called me at the last minute and I played the gig. And these are, I mean, it was so great because these are the same songs that Hangman played. So it was like kind of reliving my youth, and it was great fun. And so I joined the band, and I was in the band in the beginning, and then I quit for a while because life got too hectic and I couldn't handle it. But then I rejoined the band, and it's just a great band. I love the guys in the band, and we really have fun. And you know, we don't take it too seriously. We know we're just a cover band, but we try and be a good cover band. We try and do this stuff good, and we try and do it exciting. We're not just trying to mimic it. We're actually trying to
That's a good band. You guys are great. Yeah, it's a great band.
we're trying to put our own energy into it, you know. So I feel like we're not just, trying to play everything note for note. We're trying to just grab the spirit of it and play it.
You do what a girl can't do.
We do.
And
Don't forget about Rod Knox and the Burt Valves. With Mr. Ratso.
Yeah, Ratso and Mark,
Martha.
Joe and I had a rockabilly band called Rod Knox and the Burt Valves.
That's right.
We think about a reunion. Should we get a reunion? Should we set a date for a reunion right
We
now?
better do it soon because Johnny Castle is the bass player and he's retiring soon. So.
Well, now that you mentioned that, another shameless plug, I can tell you December 4th at Rosenstiel Hall will be Johnny Castle's retirement party. Tickets for that will go on sale shortly with the Nighthawks and the Thrillbillies and Kelly Bell Band. So that's
well,
coming.
we definitely have to make that one. Johnny and I go back a long way. Johnny was in Crank when you were in Claude Jones and I was in Grin. We did a lot of shows together. The Emergency, for one thing, at that club. But Crank was, of the 3 top bands in D.C. at that time were Crank, Claude Jones, and Grin.
And Joe, how about you? What do you do these days? Are you playing anymore? Or?
Well, I released an album in 2018.
Can we find this out front?
Huh?
Can we find
Yeah,
that?
it's on. You can just ask your smart speaker, and I come up on Spotify. It went to 292 on the Americana charts, which sounds bad, but it's out of like 850 positions. But it basically went lead. You know. But so there. Since then, I'm still fiddling around trying to, maybe do another record.
That's great.
But of course, the COVID, I didn't kind of put a damper on the old career there. But, yeah, we're still fiddling around a little bit.
Well, Joe, I want to ask you a lot, and I got a couple of people asking on cards here, the story about A Hard Lesson and Rod Stewart.
Yeah, well, that was because of Nils. Did you know that?
I did not.
Nils set that up. Nils was in the studio, and I think in L.A., with Rod Stewart. And whoever Rod's manager was, said, Nils overheard him say, we need a ballad, we need a good ballad. And Nils said, well, my friend Joe Triplett's got the song Hard Lesson to Learn, you want to try that? So Nils played it for him, and they ended up doing it. With Steve Cropper on guitar. And so I actually made some money. They gave us $5,000 up front. Actually made some money over it. But it never got released in the States. It was released on the flip side of one of those big 33s that you play at 45 in England.
Right. Single.
And I think
12-inch single.
I think the A side was one of my most hated Rod Stewart songs. I think it was If You Think I'm Sexy. I think that was the A side.
Oh well.
Can I ask a question?
But it was the B side.
And do you want to talk a little bit about Bernie Taupin and his role on the song?
Well, they didn't like my first verse, so
Well, they liked the first one. They wanted another verse. I think they wanted to add a verse, didn't they?
I can't remember.
They added a verse.
Taupin wrote another verse, and then we gave away a bunch of publishing.
Right.
It was, you know, they held out that before we would get our upfront money. So
Like a $100 check to Arthur Crudup.
it did get released like 20 years, 30 years later. It was on outtakes, Rod Stewart outtakes. So it eventually got released in the United States.
It's on his box set.
What's that?
It's on a box set.
On a box set of
Rod
outtakes.
Stewart, Storyteller, I think is the name of the box set.
But never followed up with it. I never got any payments or anything.
0 yen?
That was for Been a While. Been a While got picked up, Claude Jones. No, it's Rosalind Mountain Boys. Been a While got picked up by a band, a Japanese band, who, and it was I think it was a minor hit in Japan in 75 or 6 or whatever it was. And we got a statement from the public, from ASCAP or BMI, whoever it was, for 0 yen.
Did you get that, Frank?
Question.
Mark, question.
Yes.
Who was the hired hands? Who ended up in Joe Triplett?
The hired hands was me and Bob and Peter and Rico with
Without Tommy. Tommy had left.
The Marine.
Tommy Hannon was not in the band without Tommy.
There was a Marine in the band.
Ken Ashford.
Ken Ashcraft on guitar.
So it was you two and Peter and Rico.
And Ken Ashcraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did Pete Kennedy do Hired Hands too?
What, Martha?
Did Pete Kennedy do Hired Hands gigs?
He did.
Pete sat in sometimes, yeah.
But he used to sit in with the Mountain Boys too,
Right.
in Birchmere a
Yeah.
lot. He was like
Pete, the man of 1,000, you know, can play any song. It's amazing.
There's not a song you can name that you can't play. I don't care what genre.
He saved us one night. It rained, and they were paying us good money, and so we needed this. You know, they were paying us good money. We needed to provide music for 2 more sets.
Right.
But we had to all go in this room when it was pouring rain outside. This is someplace in Northern Virginia, and Pete saved the day. Pete got up and stood up on the couch. And played Beatles songs. Just played one
In the
Beatles
living
song
room
after the
all
other.
the time, yeah.
And
He saved
everybody
it.
was happy, and
We got paid.
we got paid.
He was at the Save Damien benefit.
What's that?
Save Damien benefit? Remember
I'm sorry,
Yeah, we played Damien's Benefit. Damien's Benefit.
Big
We
benefit
played that.
concert at Plaza.
Oh, yeah.
That was the Ross Mountain Boys with John Carroll and Johnny Castle. It was the Mountain Boys, or any, you know, sometimes we just used the name and threw whoever was available on the band, and we would play our hits, and everybody knew the songs. So, you know.
Goats.
The Roslyn Mountain Goats, yes.
Funny story about it.
At the Quarry House.
Mike Oldman, our manager, was driving around and somewhere in Northern Virginia, and he was just, minding his own business. And he sees this big sign on this next to this driveway. It says Roslyn Mountain Boys on Saturday, and he was the manager. He didn't book this. So he turns around, he goes back, Roslyn Mountain Boys Saturday, and then the little letters like this, Junior. Roslyn Mountain Boys Junior. So Michael says, fuck this, so he drives down the driveway to find out what's going on, and it's like the pagans. It's a pagan gig. And Mike says, oh hi, I was just curious about the Roslyn Mountain Boys gig, we love you guys. We'll see you there.
We had a question from the audience about recording with Adelphi Records.
Well, we ended up on Adelphi because no major took us. Well, Mike Oberman, our manager, he took it to LA to sell to a record company, and it was like the week after a Saturday Night Fever came out. And all of a sudden, country rock was dead. Anything with a steel guitar on it was dead. So, and that's a good album. I'm proud of that album, but it just, there was no major that was going to touch it. And so it ended up on Adelphi. And that's where most of the local bands ended up when they couldn't get a major. Gene had a, whatever you might want to say about Gene, but he did put the records out.
He just did.
Any more questions from the audience? Yes.
How did Ricky Skaggs get involved in the second album?
Ricky Skaggs was in town, and Tommy had him.
Gary Olsey.
Huh?
Gary Olsey sent him over from Birchmere.
And sent him over to Bias, and he played on a Tommy Hammond song. Bad Connection, right?
Bad Connection.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah. We're not particularly thrilled with that album. It's like, by the time we did that record, we were pretty shot. It's unfortunate. I'm glad you like it. It's got a few good things on it, but it's kind of like the Hangman album to me. It's like, it just didn't represent who we were in our
Because it was
heyday.
Ricky Skaggs, it was God's will.
At least he thinks it was.
David Briggs, we had David Briggs trying to produce
Yeah.
it. So we were hoping Briggs would
We have another question.
make the
in chat.
difference.
Yeah, Bob's told me some good stories in the past of hanging out or being around Graham Parsons. I was just wondering if you
Oh, that's a good
put
story.
any of those out.
So, we're playing the Topanga Corral. And, we weren't playing that night. We were living in Topanga Canyon, and the Flying Burrito Brothers were playing. Because I was living in the owner's basement right behind the club, and Taj Mahal played Monday, and the Burrito Brothers played Tuesday, and we would play the rest of the week. But a couple days earlier, Neil had come in and sat in with the band all night. And I don't want to particularly tell the whole story, but the gist of it at the end, I don't want to speak poorly of anybody, really. But George Daly was the bass player. And George went a little overboard on his bass when Neil was sitting in with us. And Neil, who was going to be our producer, basically told Nils, you got to let this guy go. I'll produce you, but this guy's got to go. So Nils comes to me and says, well, we won't have a shot if we don't do this. And he wanted to come back and hire Bob Gordon, but the way to do it, like all bands do, we're breaking up. So, with the plan to come back to DC and get Bob Gordon. George and I are still close friends. It's like but he did kind of, and what he did to Otley was kind of karma coming back. But, so, the night this all goes down, the Burrito Brothers are playing the Corral, and George and Nils are in a screaming match right outside the back door. In each other's face screaming. And I'm standing there like, with my thumb up my ass going, but lo and behold, The door opens and out comes Graham Parsons. And Graham kind of looks at them screaming at each other. And he looks at me, kind of shakes his head, takes a few steps over and gets on that beautiful chopper he had with that paint job of, you know, the universe on the tank, and just kind of gets on his bike and looks over and smiles and rides away. So that's that story.
Any more questions from the audience? Bill Rice.
Tammy Wynette story?
Only did we play with her.
We opened for Tammy Wynette at
Constitution Hall.
yeah.
I remember standing next to him. That was good enough.
We didn't get to see her play because we opened the show and then we packed up and played at Desperados.
Yeah, that's probably right.
So, yeah, we had 2 gigs that night.
Louis.
Is it possible to get a Claude Jones CD anywhere? Like a compilation of all your stuff? I think I have something on tape, but
You know,
it'd be nice to be able to have a CD.
there's a Claude Jones album made in 1990 or 91. It's on cassette.
Wasn't there an EP, like a 7-inch
Yeah,
EP or something?
yeah, there's an EP, the original
No,
EP.
there's a whole album of Claude Jones made in 1991 on
Yeah.
cassette. That John Guernsey was the prime mover on that.
Right, and you redid some of the songs. But the original...
Yes, we redid. The songs were all redone.
Yeah, but the original release was on an EP.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, you know, it's a collector's thing. You'll have to go on Discogs or eBay or something to find it.
But those CDs nowadays that have been remade so people can buy them.
No one's done that. Even though you did that with the Rousing Mountain Way album. We could do it.
Yeah.
Wait, Joey.
Somebody was going to do it. I forgot
The
who.
website that Connie has put up?
What's that?
The website, the Claude Jones website?
Yeah.
That had it on the website,
That
the
has some,
singles.
files, some tracks.
Well, Peter Blatchley may have posted it so you can download it from the Claude Jones website.
I think it
Maybe.
is.
I think that might be what happened.
Connie did all the...
I know, that's who called me about it, yeah. Peter Blatchley was the prime mover on that, yeah. The original guitar player.
It's real good.
Well, we appreciate everybody coming out. We're going to close out with some music here. Joe, I know you're going to play it for us here.
There's several versions of this over the years.
We did a reggae version of this song. We did a soul version of this song. We did a
Yeah,
rock
we've done lots of
version.
different versions.
We've done lots of versions of this song, none of which anybody's really heard.
One day you'll know just how it feels to see someone that you want so. Or just some way you could make it be. You give up all that you have. But when you look into her eyes, no reflection do you see. No love light glowing there that you hope you would see. And it's a hard lesson to learn, my friend. A hard lesson to learn. Sometimes you get just what you want. Sometimes you'll get more. I drifted ocean would flow from your heart to me. But when I looked into your eyes, no reflection did I see. No love glowing there, like I prayed there. And it's a hard lesson to learn. A hard lesson to learn. Sometimes you get just what you want. Sometimes you'll get burned. Sometimes you get just what you want. Sometimes you get burned. Sometimes you get just what you want. Sometimes you'll get burned.
Joe Triplett, Bob Berberich, lots of now, boys. I don't know if we yell out enough they would do one more song or not.
Mom and Joe!
Get Bobby to do one.
Next one is one.
Thank you all for coming out. We got the City Boys next month. We got the Vikings downstairs, Rockasonics downstairs. There's a lot going on at the Hub. Don't be a stranger. Thank you all for coming out.
Oh, good. That's going to be great. Excellent. Good. Certainly nice night. Sure. All right. You know where to find
Yeah, listen. Hi there. Thank you. I'm Joe.
I'm Suzanne.
Suzanne.